Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the Convergint and Genetec webinar on streamlining the airport badging process today. I'm going to kick it off with introducing myself and then let you know about the agenda, and we'll move on to the webinar from there. So I'm Melissa Mathis. For those of you that don't know me, I'm with Convergent Technologies. I am the Aviation Strategic Account Manager here, and I work closely with the Genetec team, our airports, and other partners to help get our airports the products that they need. So for the agenda today, we're going to start with a presentation on the solution from Genetec. They're going to explain what it is, and then they're going to move on to a demo of the solution. Afterwards, we'll talk about easy ways to procure the Genetec airport badging solution. And after that, we'll move on to a Q&A. If you would like to have questions that you want answered, feel free to type them into the Q&A section, and we'll be answering those at the end of the webinar. I'm now going to pass it to Joe DeGrassi from Genetec to start his presentation. Thanks, Joe.
Cool. Thanks, Alyssa. I want to first off thank the Convergent team for putting this together, and as well as thank the Convergent team for the partnership. We've worked very, very closely with Alyssa and kind of before her, Matt Powell, for the last about 5 years or so, developing of various national airport strategies. And honestly, this product came from one of our mutual clients. We kind of identified a client that, or an airport that was having a lot of frustrations working with the DAC and kind of automating some of the processes. And we talked to that client, won them together, worked with them very closely, and actually built this product together. So obviously it's a Genetec solution. We've been working on it for years, but the Convergent team was paramount in the success of this solution, and we worked directly on one of our customers who's very, very happy about it. So, and that's something I want to reinforce to any of the airports that are on this call. You know, the expertise of a team like Convergent that really understands a badging process and what actually happens in a badging office is something that's really, really important, because there's a variety of things that can happen, you know, challenges that, you know, can come out of left field that maybe we weren't expecting during the conversion, and having an integrator with that expertise like Convergent is really, really an important thing. So, but my role at Genetec, I've kind of worn a lot of hats here. I've been here around 7.5 years or so, and I've been working in the aviation industry for about a decade. I was in charge of the airport practice for the US market for about the last 5 years for Genetec. And this is one of the solutions that I've been thinking we needed for a long time. I think if you looked at the industry in general, there really were some of these really complex identity management solutions that were kind of sitting on top, but no one really tried to develop a unified core product that took your entire badging process and just built it in naturally into the access control. So, not to steal my own thunder, we'll jump into what that is here in a few minutes, but I'm also the director of the Public Sector West, and I work with our consultant team across the US, and even work with the consultant team in Canada. So Security Center for Airports, I'm not going to dive too deep into what we do, but just so you know, the core of who Genetec is Security Center. All of our products, whether it be access control, video, license plate recognition, whether it be intercoms, gunshot, shooter detection systems, just all these different various things that you would see in an airport, intercoms, they're all part of a core solution we call Security Center. But the other unique thing about Genetec is, instead of just trying to do a one-size-fits-all approach to airport security, we actually have built a solution specifically for airports. And what do I mean by that? I mean, everybody can come in and say, oh, we do airports. We got, you know, XYZ CADX airport, and we got, you know, all this stuff we do with access control in this airport and blah, blah, blah. When I say we actually have a unique airport solution, it means we work directly with our airport clients and customers and build products and solutions specifically for the aviation market. If we look at ABS, Airport Badging Solutions, this is an example of a product that was built solely for airports. Quite often in the IDMS space, you know, they may come in and start talking about, oh, we could do healthcare and we could do this and that and blah, blah, blah. The solution that we're going to present to you today was literally built for an airport, for airports specifically, and that's its one function. But we look at other things. You know, we worked with Rome Airport, Charles de Gaulle. We built our PIDS system. If we deal with what we call mission control, you know, Toronto Pearson's longtime customer of ours, and Schiphol Airport, we built that hand in hand with them to make sure that we built a product for them. If you're a baseball fan, there was a movie called Field of Dreams, but it was if you build it, they will come. We wanted to take the opposite. We wanted to actually build solutions because we knew our customers wanted them. So, Rome Airport, we built something, and if you look on this slide, we're talking about flight business logic, tying into the airport's operational database to bring that data in to make the access control system or even the video system more intelligent, being able to respond to events based off of what's actually happening, tying in your phys systems, all these kinds of things. So when we say we're actually an airport solution, it's because we have products that are tailored specifically for the aviation market. Which is kind of a unique play on the way that we target aviation. So if we look at badging though, specifically, and that's what the core of what we're talking about today, we all know that in airports, we're dealing with the same problems. And actually, I think it's kind of consistent across all the transportation industry, whether it be aviation or just any type of public transportation, or even any public entity, we're having to do more with less. And there was a variety of reasons. Obviously, COVID impacted the industry, and we all had to deal with those kinds of things, increased regulation, hard to get, staff our offices. Even Genetec and Convergint, I know they're trying to hire a bunch of people. We're trying to hire a bunch of people. It's challenging, right? So we're having to do more with less. And the truth is, these regulations are here. We all have to deal with them and figure out ways to manage to maintain compliance and to try to streamline our operations and make things more efficient. Beyond all the stuff that we have on this slide, those are the things I think are the biggest challenges that we're all facing day to day right now in airports. Another challenge that we see, whether it be with the badging product or with the traditional, access control and video and all these different systems, is you have all these multiple disconnected systems that somebody is trying to tie together using some kind of software plugin or some kind of SDK. It's essentially, I got two different manufacturers that need to work together. There was a great idea called a PSIM, which we all knew about in the industry, and there was a variety of problems that came from PSIMs. Now, sometimes they're great. I'm not going to say anything bad. We have PSIM partners, they do their thing. But that was one of the challenges. And I think identity management kind of fell into that space as well. They made all this customization. They did all these really, really cool things. But there was a gap when we started talking about the airport space, specifically around badging, and really just doing things specifically for airports and badging. So we wanted to automate it, build it in, have it as a single unified platform. No one was really trying to make it that way. The access control players were just allowing the identity management players to do up this. And I want to reinforce something. We still play very well with them, whether it be HID Safe. Dave Peoples, I think he's, a genius, to be honest, really, really innovative pioneer and leader in the industry. You look at IntelliSoft, what they're doing, obviously big partner Genetec too, big partner Convergence. Both those companies, obviously, we work very well with. But no one really was looking at automating and building it as just a streamlined, unified access control plugin. And that's what badging is. It's simple, reliable, it's automated. So this to me is a marketing slide. I'm just going to kind of jump from it. But really to reinforce that message, if you look at aviation, specifically for airports with access control, access control systems do traditional things. They allow us to create badges. We can create, different types of badges. I can have one that looks like this, or I can have a black one, or color code, doesn't matter. We can have all these variety of badges. We can do, advanced keypad functionality, right? Okay, so I want to override a door and enter a keypad code. And, that's kind of a minimum requirement for an access control system to play in an airport, to override that door for a certain amount of time. Okay, well, we're able to do some of those things with the jet bridge. But what badging provides is this management layer over the top of the access control system. If we look at what access control systems were originally intended for, they were built for one company to have contractors and different things, but it was essentially meant for one company that could have multiple locations. In an airport, we have the airport themselves and you guys, but we also have a variety of contractors and airlines, and we have Convergint. Maybe they have an authorized signatory, or Genetec, or each of these things, right? So if we look at it holistically, we needed to provide a management layer, which would enable us to do things like pre-enrollment of an employer, saying that United Airlines or Delta or American or Air Canada or whoever is going to be declared in there. And then under there, we can pre-enroll employees to that contractor. And we can actually say that that contractor only has access to specific subsets of badges. Well, what happens if we have Joe working at two different contractors? I work at United and I need a SIDA badge, or I work at National Car, or maybe someone else that's on the other side of the airfield, and I need two different badges with two different access rules, privileges, things like that. That management layer lets us do that, helps us manage those identities, and that's really what we're talking about when we start showing you badging. And I'll cover most of that in the demo right now. Now, this is the traditional approach to badging in your offices. Now, some of you may be using paper, where we literally have paper files, and we're keeping a file of all the different information around that identity and that individual. So if the TSA shows up and wants to do an audit, we have it right now in paper, and hopefully we don't lose any of it. But the other side of it is you might have a live scan system, this big albatross to scan, your hands and do that stuff and automate some of the biometric processes. But traditionally what it is you have an identity management client, which is your own GUI, your own user interface. You have an access control client that does its functions and does what it does. You have a fingerprint system that does what it does, and you have all these other systems. The idea with our badging solution was, let's take all of that and turn it into one GUI. The same GUI that you use for access control is the same GUI you're going to be using for your badging. The same GUI you did for your reporting, the same reporting engine even that we do to run video reports or LPR reports or intercom reports or any activities in the access control. Guess what? It's the same reporting system, just with different parameters for badging. So that really improves your training. We talked about having to do more with less. If we look at an airport, we may have that individual doing multiple tasks and multiple functions within the airport. Well, now they only have to learn one system. If we have a high turnover role, again, that's one system. So the trusted agent may be doing different types of things. Well, one system they have to learn, and it's easier. They don't have to log into a separate GUI. So I'm not logging into the DAC and trying to validate someone's information and having a portal to do that and hopefully enter the information right. It's all seamlessly integrated into one single GUI. And that's what we're going to show you today. So from that, we're going to jump into the core of what we're going to talk about today, which is the badging solution. And for those who are not familiar with Genetec, this is what the login looks like when you log in a security desk. Very busy. That's not actually what the login looks like. That's what the login looks like if you're an administrator. And what I mean by that is we can control, we can do different types of privileges, things like that. But if I log in and I have access as an admin, I'd have all these different icons and functions that I can do. Anything that's listed in kind of this green color, this is going to be anything video related. Anything in this red color is access control related. Anything in yellow is LPR. And then there's a variety of different functions and things that are just kind of, depending on which one they are, you could use. When we do badging, the only difference is now we have a new icon that appears for your badging task. Now that task, we could limit it when the trusted agent logs in. They don't see any of these other icons. All they see is that one, and that's all they can do when they log in. Or maybe we want them to deal with some basic credential management or other types of visitor management. We can actually say which functions they would have based off their logins and credentials. So don't get intimidated by the fact that it may look a little busy. That's only if you have admin privileges. We can get very granular into saying which functions they are able to support. So from there, I'm going to show you guys when we first put an employer in, we're going to use Genetec as an example. Genetec, we want to be able to tell where they are, who the authorized signatory is, try to pre-enroll, hold on, I'm pre-enrolling an employee right now to Genetec. But we also want to be able to say, what privileges does Genetec have as a contractor with the airport? Do I have access to cite a badge, AOA badge, or to certain areas of the airport or certain types of color codes that we've pre-declared? The nice thing is most of those things are done in the access control system. We had an airport that we were talking to, which is, I believe, actually a Convergint customer that invited us on. But they had talked about how their existing identity management, just to change the parameters on one element of their badge, just to like change a couple letters or something like that. The identity management managed that, and they had to push it down to the third-party access control. And unfortunately, it took them a year with a ticket just to change those parameters. The nice thing with Genetec is it is just synergist. We don't have to worry about multiple platforms. You can change it on the fly like that. But we're going to declare which privileges Genetec has. So we're pre-enrolling an employer, and now we're going to pre-enroll an employee. Now there's three basic ways that you can add an identity to the system. One is this way, fat finger. I'm going to go there and I'm going to enter all the information. Anything in red is mandatory that the TSA requires, and we have to have that information if we're going to validate it with the DAC, right? The other way is scanning with a passport. So if I show up and I've got my driver's license or a passport, we have that sitting on a desk. That individual comes to the badging office, they scan that, and now all these different parameters will also be pre-populated. The third way is what I'm going to show you, which is also our authorized signatory portal. So if we have a authorized signatory, let's say it's Joe again from Genetec, and I'm declared as the authorized signatory, and Elaine Basada, ends up being somebody who needs to work with the airport, I would be able to enter Elaine's information into the system on the portal, and then it would pre-enroll and push down to this portal exactly as well. I'll show you what that kind of looks like here in a few minutes, but that's the 3 basic ways that we're able to enter information of that individual. So as we go through, you'll notice things like social security number gets entered. Obviously, that's a fake one. This is all kind of fake information, but that's something that's privileged. Only that people that have those privileges can see that information. So if I have somebody who's not a trusted agent, who tries to log into a workstation that has the badging client running on it, and they don't have the proper privileges, they wouldn't be able to see that, obviously, right? So those are the kinds of things, obviously, we can do. Now we're going to go through, and one thing I want to highlight, if you notice, each of these are grayed out. They're grayed out because you can't go to the next function until you fully complete the previous function. That way, after it gets submitted, there's not going to be any information needed to us to have to go back and refill it in. It should all be done properly before submittal. So we're going through and declaring basic things about the occupation, their privileges, all those kinds of things, eventually getting down to badge type. Well, we're going to give them the badge type in this airport scenario. They named the badge type by color. That color is associated with the different types of privileges they would have. Now that could also be set up in any way that you guys want as well. Docs and forensics. So this is where things get interesting. Now, and obviously if we scan the passport or the driver's license, that would be associated here. That's going to be stored in a digital file and encrypted. The other thing is you may have like an I-9 form. Well, okay, I got an I-9 form or something like that we need them to sign. All of those would be listed here in their documents. When they select it, we also have a digital signature pad that sits there. Now, this has to be done in person at the office, but they would sign off on that document, and then it would be digitally filed away. The goal is to streamline it and get rid of having to have all this paper or a bunch of Excel spreadsheets and things like that to manage the identities within the airport. So in this scenario, they're actually scanning the signature right now, and they've read the document, it's displayed in front of them. They digitally sign it, then we have it mapped on the time they signed it. We have the trusted agent validate that is an individual, and that's all reportable if we need to later on. The other thing you'll notice is we can now scan fingerprints. So we have partnered with IDEMIA. IDEMIA makes a very, very streamlined, low-cost, USB-based fingerprint scanner that works directly with our software. And we could take that entire set of fingerprints off of that without needing a third-party live scan system. So we can kind of automate that to kind of bring it all under one platform to streamline things and kind of simplify the offering. And that's what we're showing here is we're actually collecting that biometric information. So one part is it skips disqualifying. The reason it skips disqualifying is that's something our pro services would work with Convergint to help you guys set up ahead of time. And it's something that can be modified by the airport later on. But what it is federally, we have a certain amount of restrictions that we all have to comply with. On a state and local level, there might be different disqualifying entities that we need to look for. So those are something that we can set up. So when we get that criminal history report coming back, we're looking for those specific types of disqualifying reasons why that individual wouldn't be able to get that badge. Now, that's something we set up ahead of time. That's why it skips over it. But that is part of this, and it can be modified later if it's necessary. And the reason, again, it's there is that each state tends to have a little bit different types of regulations when it comes to disqualifications. So from here, we're going to run a criminal history report and an STA. You'll notice that we can choose the destination for that criminal history report. So if you think of, let's say, American Airlines is requesting it for this individual and they want a copy of it, this is something that we can automate here too. Select the destination. Is it staying with the airport or is it going off to another location? That's something that we show here. The other thing you'll notice is that it automatically enrolls that identity in wrapback. So any identity that gets pushed through here is going to be automatically enrolled in wrapback unless you decide not to. And if you decide not to, then it's going to ask for reasons, things like that. So automatic subscription to wrapback as well. So we go through, and in this case, we're sending it off to the DAC. So it could be Telos, AAAE. And they're submitting it and it's showing it's pending in wrapback. It's about to be cleared. So obviously in this scenario, it's very quick, but we all know that sometimes these reports could take a week, it could take a couple days, it could take whatever, right? Rather than having a portal, so you'll notice on the left side here, we have John Doe awaiting clearance. Mark Jones awaiting clearance. I used Elaine because it was the first name on here, but Elaine is the example earlier. He would be sitting here awaiting clearance too. Once they've been submitted or cleared, the status would change. Doesn't mean that they have a badge, doesn't mean that they're not out of that management layer and pushed into Synergist yet. It just means that maybe we've already got the report back from the DAC and or from TSC, and we're going to wait and see. So what we're showing here is, okay, we've got the report back very quickly, and now we're going to go ahead and approve that this individual passed. Now that is something that has to be reportable too. So we have to make sure that trusted agent validated that the criminal history report came back clear, and that they, on this date at this time, validated that individual was clear. So that's what we're doing here. And same with the SDA, we're going to show the report was passed, and we're going to go on. So now going to access levels, things like this. The first iteration of this product, right now, training is not built into it. But the other thing to keep in mind is that our solution is subscription-based. So you'll always get the latest and greatest and newest version. That is pretty common, I guess, in the space. Normally they have like SMAs and large SMA contracts, things like that. For Genetec, we didn't want to do that. We just wanted to make sure you guys always have the latest and greatest. We're not going to charge you for all these upgrades. And, oh, now we just came with this new version that has this new stuff, so now you got to pay all this money on top of your SMA. No, we wanted to build it all seamlessly in with the subscription. The other side of it is, as this is expanded and we have more and more airports working with us, one of the first big features we've identified as a feature gap is the training being seamlessly built in. So the plan is by end of year this year that would be fully integrated. But as of right now, what would happen is the individual would get their training back, and the trusted agent would go through and say whether they passed or failed. That is all archived and then reportable as well. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is we will log how many times that they've tried this test. So let's say on their SIDA badge, they ended up failing 3 times within that year. Well, you failed 3 times, the system will no longer enable that individual to be able to get a badge. You can't, because just regulations, right? So we say, okay, well, now they're flagged and that identity cannot get a badge for a full year, and then they can come back and take the trainings again and hopefully pass. So that's what we're showing here, is that we're going to log when they actually passed. So 2 tries, passing the second time, 3rd time's a charm, 3 strikes, you're out. Luckily, that individual didn't have to do that. So now we're going to add access. Keep in mind, this is something Convergint would set up in the back end, the access levels. And then we're going to declare those access levels for that identity. Those are all mapped in Synergist, and now we're just grabbing them and picking them based off of the privileges that that employer has. That's what we're showing here. The last part is the new badge request. Okay, so we know they have access to red badges, and we know they have access to these levels, and now we're doing a card request. They still do not exist in Synergist yet. They don't exist in the access control platform. They're just sitting in this management layer until the badge is actually issued. Now, there may be a dozen badges that need to be issued that day that's sitting pending. The other thing is we can declare, is it automatic entry where, we have, let's say, a little USB reader sitting on the desktop, and now I scan my badge and beep, and now all of a sudden that populates. Or is it manual entry where I'm, doing a fat finger thing, and we know what the facility code, card number, things like that are, probably going to be the least commonly used. And then the other one is an existing credential. We already have a variety of credentials that are already in the system, and then we're just going to grab one of those and attach it to this individual. Finally, at the very end, once it's printed, that is when they actually exist in the access control system. And now the security check has changed and the status has changed. So this is a basic dashboard where we would have all the information about the individual. So let's say the authorized signatory doesn't have the portal. They didn't subscribe. We didn't subscribe to that. Not a problem. We're a smaller airport, don't want that. Well, that's no problem. Now, they normally may call or send an email saying, hey, where's the status of John Doe? I want to know where he is in the process. Has he been cleared? Can we have him start in a week? You would be able to see it here. The other thing I'll show you is that all of this, instead of just having one dashboard for the badging process, we can build customized dashboards based off of any report in Synergist, including badging, and be able to show, how many we have that are done that day, how many are pending, how many have been cleared that we need to go through before we issue those badges that day. We can kind of set up that badging office so every day they know exactly what activities they have based off their customized dashboards. I'll show you guys that here in a few seconds. So jumping to reporting. So this is the same engine, if you guys are familiar with Synergist, again, task-based user interface. So before we had a task that popped up for the badging process. Now we have a new task for reporting. Those tasks would be represented up here at the top, just the same way when you use Google Chrome or any of those kinds of things where you have your various tabs represent something different that you're trying to do. That's the way Synergist Security Center works. So same reporting engine you're used to, just a few customized parts that we have, or these customized elements that we've built in to make sure they're compliant with your badging office. Those are things like your company, your badge types, the application status, employment status, security check types, security check dates, agency status, badge things, wrap back, badge activity, badge expiration date, random percentages, things like that. Now, random percentage, what that is let's say that you are doing an internal audit, or the TSA shows up and says, I want to do a 5% audit. Well, not a problem. They would be able to click the parameters that we want on that audit and then set up a percentage of 5% of these badges that I want to review today. Well, we click that, now we'd have that report, a 5% of, let's say, AOA badges, CIDA badges, whatever. That's what this random percentage is equal to. And then, of course, whether they were returned or not, that's a big thing that we all have to deal with. So from here, we're going to go ahead and show up. Maybe this is what we would do in a normal day. We have a certain, again, these are all fake. They're not real identities. So, but we're going through and we're checking, and we're ready to badge, and we run this report. Now they're going to run a random report, but the big thing is ready to badge, security check approved, or security check completed. This may be my daily task that I, as an operator, or that I, as somebody in the badging office, need to run, and then I could create this to a dashboard. The unique thing about Genetec is any report that you've done, all you have to do is click this little icon up here on top, and now that could be added to your badging office dashboard. So when I log in every day, my dashboard would show up and I would see this is exactly what I have, and these are the individuals that would have. And we can make that clean. You can make it as like a graph or a bar graph or whatever you want to do. The other thing to keep in mind is this is where we start to get into automation of reports. So since it's the same basic reporting engine, it's very simple to create these things, and we can do them on the fly. Or let's say you want to do a report every week or every month to the finance team for all the badges that were issued that week for a specific subset of contractors, or for all of them, depending on your process. We can narrow that down and then automate that report. So after all these are done, it just automatically sends a report to finance that is kind of a flattened file and shows them things like, here's how many badges we issued for Delta. Here's how many badges we issued for United. This is how many we did for XYZ contractor. This is how many we did for Convergint. The other thing is whether or not the badges are returned. Well, we have this many terminated employees, and we have every week we want a report going to the signatory saying you haven't returned this badge, or maybe that's a daily thing. And then now finally they get to a threshold. Well, it's been 30 days. Now this goes to finance, and finance is going to charge a big fee back to the airline or to that contractor because they didn't return that badge. Those are the kinds of things we can automate based off of our reporting engine. And that's the kind of concept here. Any report can either be created to a dashboard, or can be automatically run and be sent as an email, or be created as a flattened file or a spreadsheet or whatever they wanted to do. So that's what we're showing here. And then at the very bottom, they're going to do the random percentage thing, just kind of showing the way that that would work as well. So going from reporting, I'm going to jump to the signatory portal. So this portal is a cloud-based portal, and it's using something that we call ClearID. Now, keep in mind again that the badging solution is not cloud-based. The badging solution, even though it's a subscription, is a localized system that the airport owns and manages and operates on their own. We're going to be able to give a connector to a signatory through this portal to be able to push information to your hardened system. But even if that connection was interrupted and done, it does not interrupt operations because you have that system at your office, or excuse me, at your airport, right? This is just merely a means for us to be able to say, okay, I'm a authorized signatory of Genetec, and I have Elaine Basada starting. And I need to fill out some information for Elaine for him to be able to go through the badging process. That's all we're doing. So when we talked at the very beginning of the demo about the 3 ways to do it, this is the 3rd way that I was showing you. And it is a subscription, allowing you to do a certain amount of identities per year. It's the only thing we don't charge. I know the airports have asked things like, well, do you charge per identity? No, we don't. What we charge for is the base license. Doesn't matter who you connect to. It could be Telos, it could be AAA. That's not the way it works. And we want to continuously work with you to improve the solution, things like that. But this is just another subscription that you can apply to. It's the only one that has like a set of number of identities you can work with. I think it's something like 1,000 identities. And that would enable them to not only pre-enroll and go through this whole process. You'll notice everything's grayed out, same way, same GUI or type of concept. But once they're done, now all of a sudden, they exist in the system as pre-enrolled. If they had missing information, let's say somebody overwrote it and still submitted it, well, we know the social security number isn't quite correct. It'll show up red. Well, now we can send it back and say, hey, you need to make sure you fill this out correctly. And eventually that individual would be pre-enrolled. The other thing you can see is that where are they in the process? So no longer do I have to, now we're going to automate reports and send it to the authorized signatories, however you want to do that. And our pro service and Convergint could work with you based off your operations and the way that you want to do this. But the signatory portal enables them to see where the status is. They're waiting for approvals, they're completing, and they're already, getting a badge, or they already have a badge, and we already know that. What's not appearing right now is things like expiration date, but that is something that we're building into the portal as well. So from that, that's the basic demo, the core of what we were going to talk about today. And then I'm going to jump to contract vehicles, which is something that Alyssa was going to talk about. And then we're going to open up for questions. I saw in the chat it was very busy and there was a lot of things going around. So I'm going to read through some of those to make sure I'm prepared when we jump to contract vehicles. So let's see.
Thanks, Joe. Hi, everyone. We're going to talk a little bit about contract vehicles, which is an easy way for you to be able to procure the airport badging solution through Convergint. So we have what we call contract vehicles, but they're cooperative purchasing contracts. There's 3 major cooperatives within the US. Sourcewell, Omnia, and CPA are the 3. Pretty much any airport or city, airport authority of that sense that we have ever worked with has access to at least one of these 3 cooperatives. If there's anyone from Canada on the call, because we know we had some registrations from Canada as well, Sourcewell can actually be used through Canoe up in Canada as well. So you do have that option also. Basically, these cooperatives, they take away the need for you to go through a lengthy bid process by supplementing the bid process. We have already bid to all 3 cooperatives. Through that bidding process, we have listed prices for any products and labor on these contracts that you can pull through these websites if you are a member. And you can see what that's going to cost you. And then we can quote that based on these contracts and get you a quote immediately. It basically gets you the best technology, saves you time and money, and saves you a lengthy process so that you get what you need sooner. Joe, if we could go to the next slide really quickly. So this is just a quick sum up of the benefits of cooperative purchasing. At the end of the day, you get lower prices because you're going to be able to see your prices ahead of time. You're not having to go through a bid process, which at the end of the day does cost money. You're going to get those higher quality products. We only put best in breed on our contract vehicles, and we really focus on what are the best products and services for our customers. At the end of the day, these contracts are very convenient, easy to use, and we have a team that can help you if you need more information on them or need access to which ones you have access to. We can easily look that up for you as well. So Joe, I think we'll move to the Q&A now. I know we have some questions that have come through, and we'll get to those right now.
Perfect. One of the questions I know that started was, does this work with a third-party access control? I think, Alyssa, you had texted me that earlier. No, this is not. It is don't think of this, I think one of the traditionally in the aviation space, we think of identity management and access control being 2 different things. Since we've unified that, it's essentially just another element of Synergist, which is our access control. There's obviously going to be more features, things like that, obviously, that we're having for it, but the concept is that it is just part of the access control solution. So even though Security Center has connections to a variety of different access control platforms, the badging solution is meant just to work with Synergist. Now, that being said, our team has a variety of ways we can work with the Convergint team to make this cost effective. And, obviously looking at like things like TCO, your total cost of ownership of staying with what you have, or, maybe you're doing with paper right now, and we can make things more efficient and lower costs over time by making the conversion and switch. On top of that, if let's say you have proprietary access control hardware, which I have seen quite a bit, especially in the aviation space, we have even worked with our partners over at Mercury with Convergint to come up with competitive pricing takeover type options as well. If you have a Mercury hardware today, it's actually very, very easy for us to do to take over the access control. It's pretty seamless type of thing. The hardest part is trying to map out, and that's where Convergint comes in very importantly as well, is working with your IT teams and your badging office to make sure that we understand these two different projects may be happening in parallel with one another. Maybe we're converting the access control. We know it'll be done on this date. Well, now we need to take let's say you have a different IDMS, or maybe you're doing paper and we need to still work with the AAAE or still work with Telos and validate, your database and ensure that all the information is correct. But we want to make sure those two things are being done in parallel. And that's another reason why working with a company like Convergint is so important. So hopefully that answers that question.
Hey, Joe, we got a couple of questions in the chat that I'll pose to you if you're ready to answer those.
Yep.
So the first one is there an option in the authorized signatory portal to schedule various badging appointments? For example, fingerprinting and badge training.
So right now, no. The portal's kind of in its infancy. The core solution itself was the number one focus we had, was trying to, again, build something that was just not so customized, that it was actually just like a core product that had all these features. The next iteration, which we launched this past January, is the authorized signatory portal. But it's something that we're going to continuously be updating. I can tell you the scheduler, though, of all the features that we're getting requested, is probably one of the later of the probably features in our roadmap. And there's a variety of reasons why, and I could see it's Kevin that was asking that. So we could always have another sidebar on that. If it is a little more important of a feature, we could always discuss why, and maybe we could look at it. But as of right now, no, the scheduler feature is not part of the portal. And there's other features that have kind of made it in the roadmap for the portal ahead of that.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Joe. And then there was one more question that followed that up. How authorized signatories are notified of various events without logging into the portal or running a report? Example, badge renewals.
So we basically just set up those alerts, and those could come as an email. So the authorized signatory doesn't have to do anything. They would just get that in their email. Now, we as the airport would actually set those types of reports up automatically at the onset. So right when we deploy, and then that's all automated and it'll just show up in their inbox. And there's a variety of ways we could do that as well. But the idea is that reporting engine I showed you, we build those custom reports right before we even cut over your badging office, or maybe right after, depending on how you do it. And then once that's done, it's done. You don't have to worry about it. The signatory doesn't have to, call. They don't have to log into a portal. They don't have to request it and try to run their own reports. It would just be sent to them and automated.
Great. So I think we have a few more questions here. The first one being, if there are, we kind of answered that already. But it says, if there are features we want in the solution, how do we work with Genetec to ensure they're built in the future releases? I think we kind of talked about this a little bit in further conversations. There's a roadmap, things of that nature. But I guess I would kind of follow that up with, how open are you to adding things to the system, and how would an airport go about asking for something like that?
So our goal, just like, building, as we talked about with mission control, well, we built that for an airport, even the onset of this solution, or our PIDS product, or Rome was having those problems with their access control, and we needed to build a custom tablet for the access control to automate their entire gating process for international flights and things coming on from different locations. We want to work directly with our airports as our customers, but form those partnerships, right? The Convergint team is very, very good at that too. But those feature requests are things that we want and we know that we need in order to improve the product. Keeping in mind, though, the goal of the product is to keep it streamlined and simplified and not customized, right? I think one of the challenges to the identity management space is everybody came in and promised the world, and when they bid on these huge RFPs, they have a $600,000 custom solutions element to it. That's not what we're looking to do. Now, that said, we have an airport who is working with us that is saying, okay, here's 5 features that are necessary for us to do this. Your roadmap says it'll be a year from now. Could we work with you guys to figure out how to accelerate that roadmap? And that's something we're open to doing too. And that's where our entire public sector account executive team can work directly with the airport to gather those features, have those conversations. And whether it be myself or Rick Taylor or David Leno out of Paris, who's in charge of our entire development roadmap for critical infrastructure, we're going to make sure that we gather that information and work with the airport to do those features. But the biggest thing to keep in mind, though, again, is we don't want to have all of this crazy customization where we have a chat room where people are just talking about how frustrated they are with Genetec. We wanted to make this unified and streamlined and simplified. So keep that in mind as we do development.
Great. And then I think I have 2 more questions here before we close out. First one being, can you work with both Telos and TSC? I know you've mentioned both DACs throughout the presentation, but just to clarify that and make sure that everyone knows the answer.
Yep. And we're actually deploying with our first Telos customer, I believe this month. It's in April. So, but they're very they're an easy partner to work with. We'll put it that way. It's been a pleasure actually working with the Telos team.
Okay, and then last question before we close out, unless I get more while we're asking this, but how hard is it to create customized dashboards for a trusted agent in a badging office?
So that was what we kind of showed earlier, but just to reiterate, it's incredibly simple to create any dashboard in Security Center. So as we run those reports, any report can become a real-time dashboard that when they log in, it's just a seamless dashboard, and that's their single pane of glass. It's what they look at day to day. Now that if, let's say we decide, oh, that's not quite what we like operationally, we want to change this dashboard to have 2 or 3 other elements to it. It's as simple as double clicking, going back to that report, redefining the criteria, clicking add to dashboard, and then we just drag it over, boom, done. So it's a very, very simplified way to ensure that we're not getting information overload, and that the information that's relevant to that trusted agent or that individual is represented in the dashboard that they want day to day. And if there's, later you guys want to do a more deep dive or a deeper demo, or you want us to kind of show you various dashboards, if there's one that you would want to see, that's something we could easily create and work with the Convergint team to do that demo as well.
Great. We did get one more question in the chat. And I know we kind of talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but just to reiterate it, does the solution only work with Genetec access control, or is it compatible with other providers such as Linnell?
Yep. To reiterate that, it is part of Genetec's core access control product. It's just a plugin for access control. So no, it doesn't work with Linnell. But that said, keep in mind, Linnell is a Mercury platform. Genetec is a Mercury platform. So it's very simple for us to take over and work with Convergint to convert the database of Linnell and then to add badging on top of it. That may sound like it's expensive. We don't have to replace any hardware on the Linnell perspective. In fact, most like your servers and infrastructure, all that would maintain and stay the same. The only thing we would now do is add the badging element after we convert over the access control. And our teams will work directly with you. So Alex, I can see you're the one asking that question. We can work with the Convergint team to come up with a quote to show you what the badging solution would be and what the badging solution would be with the access control cutover. And our pro services could even work with a Convergint team to make sure those two things are happening at the same time. We're very, very close knit with the Convergint team on these types of conversions.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Joe. So I don't see any more questions in the chat for now. So I think we will close this webinar out. Thank you again, everyone, for joining and asking questions. If you have any more questions, Joe's email and my email are there. Feel free to reach out to us, and we are happy to get those answered or provide further context or demos of this webinar. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you. And thank you for Convergint team for putting this on.
Thanks, Joe.